Welcome to a special edition of GNN, Greater Syracuse Association of Realtors News Network. I'm Lenore Fetko, your CEO. Today we're featuring the National Association of Realtors Chief Economist, Lawrence Yun, who spoke at our most recent Raising the Bar series. Lawrence brought great information to our members, and we're featuring it here for you again today.
All right, here we go. So this is a presentation that I provided yesterday at NAR Leadership Summit. This is a gathering of about 1,000 state and local association incoming presidents as they prepare for 2021 year. 2021 NAR president will be Charlie Opler from New Jersey. He underlay various things, but I wanted to provide the economic outlook. First, in this global pandemic where we are stuck at home doing this virtual conferences, exceptionally frustrated, once in a lifetime event. But I also want to remind you that we always need to prepare for once in a lifetime event. And you say, how can we prepare? Well, we don't know what it is, but it occurs not only once, but twice, 3, 4, 5, multiple times. It's different events. We never anticipated 9/11 events. We did not anticipate the subprime crisis of 10 years ago, or even the 1970s high inflation. No one expected it, but it came through. And if we want to jog our memory way backwards, a small country from Asia thought that could be the United States. Pearl Harbor was a complete surprise. So as we are looking into all the once-in-a-lifetime events, we have to just maneuver and overcome all these events. So we're going through this global pandemic, and no doubt, you are asking the question, what's going on? So, well, let me first start with non-economic data. This data is a cell phone GPS mobility tracker. It's not by any individual person, but technology company has been working with just aggregate data, and just based on the cell phone movement of one location to another, they can see where people are moving. So this is 2 states, Georgia and New York. Georgia was the first state to reopen their economy with a lot of controversy, asking the governor, are you crazy? We are in a coronavirus situation, and you see it in the Georgia numbers. The COVID cases are at very alarmingly high levels. While in New York, Governor Cuomo has made it clear he wants to kill the virus, stop the spread. So what this chart shows is in Georgia, the orange line, there is more mobility, people moving about, even though at the expense of the coronavirus spreading. While in New York, it was a more stricter lockdown and more stricter, longer lockdown period. But there are trade-offs, and the trade-off is showing up in the economy. So the blue is New York State unemployment rate, while orange is in the state of Georgia. So both states had exceptionally low unemployment rate before the pandemic. We hit a pandemic, but because New York had a longer lockdown, more stricter lockdown, you are seeing still elevated unemployment, even though Georgia is seeing lower unemployment rate. This is not to say one policy is better than the other, but just to show all the governors' tough choices they have to decide between containing the virus versus how you get the economy back on track. Now, if you look at the other states across the country, you also see unemployment rate varying. In the areas where they are tourist dependent, like Hawaii and Nevada, very high unemployment as we cannot fly, or people feel uncomfortable flying. But you see some variation across the country. Related to the job market, in the US, this is the job situation over the past 20 years. So I put that red line just as a reference of what it was 20 years ago. In the middle of the chart is the Great Recession we had 10 years ago, the foreclosure crisis, if we remember. So that's the foreclosure crisis. Then we had 10 straight years, longest number of years of economic expansion, 10 straight years of job creation. And in a single month of April, we lost all that job because of the pandemic government imposed lockdown. And because it was a government mandated lockdown, one other thing that we lobbied hard, and thank you all the local association presidents like President Till here in Syracuse, who advocated on our behalf to say unemployment insurance should be available for the realtors who have been working hard before the pandemic. So hopefully you were able to tap into the unemployment insurance during that business disruption period. And also small business loan for the real estate brokerages, which often you don't have to repay if you meet certain criteria. But as the economy reopened, you see that the recent 3 dots of data showing that jobs are recovering, but we still have a long way to go. We have only recovered about 40% of those job losses. We need to go another 60% to get the full job recovery. Now the Syracuse market. This is the job market for Syracuse, completely unlike the US. So let me go back to the US. US, you see some job creation, foreclosure crisis, we hit a low point in job creation. But in Syracuse, essentially you had a flat job condition over the past 20 years. Some job losses during the foreclosure situation, and then a pandemic hit and bam, you went way, way down. Slow recovery coming off that. So there is a greater relative pain in New York State and also in Syracuse compared to the rest of the country in terms of the overall job situation. But because of the stimulus package, people's incomes are actually better situation now than before. Normally, income grows about 3 or 4% each year. But during the pandemic, people's income grew by 10%. And you say, how is that possible? Again, that enhanced unemployment insurance check, the $1,200 stimulus check, if you remember back then, along with additional amount if you have dependent family members in the family members. So massive stimulus package has boosted people's income. So people's incomes are higher. What are they doing with this money? They are not spending. First, there was no place to spend money. If the restaurants are shut down, well, you cannot spend money. Fortunately, now you can do takeout orders, and depending upon which economic opening phase you are, maybe you have outdoor dining or maybe half capacity indoor dining. I'm not sure, but even baseball game, you cannot attend in person. So even though people have more money because of stimulus, they are not spending, which also means as we go into further reopening in the economy, and hopefully in a safe way, so we don't have the spread of the virus, there is a potential for unleashing of all this spending power. And certainly will be the case if the vaccine is discovered. So there is large amount of cash in the bank that is ready to be spent back into the economy because people have saved up sizable amount of money. And interesting, just where people are spending money right now, online shopping, not surprising. People going to the beer and wine stores at the expense of going to the bar. So, going to the bar is low. Sporting goods is up. Building material and gardening. People are stuck at home, so they wanted to improve their home. So they're spending there. But you see the areas where it's down, especially clothes. If you don't have to meet people, why do you need new clothes? So spending. So you see a little variation as to where people are spending and not spending. Now, apartments, even with high unemployment condition, the people are mostly paying rent. Even in a good economy of last year, 90% of the rent checks came on time, 90%. Right now is 88%, very little difference. Some social activists are saying cancel rent, don't pay rent, and all that part. But Americans are still paying rent, broadly speaking. And maybe it's that stimulus check, enhanced unemployment benefits that's providing the resources, which then raises the question, what about the upcoming months as the unemployment benefit amount is shrinking? Will that change some of the rent picture? So it remains to be seen, but so far, people have been paying rents on time. Now let's look towards the housing market, and it is quite remarkable. So first, during the pandemic, we saw 3 straight months of sales decline. And New York State, pretty much every market encountered the same situation. And in the month of June, we saw slight upturn. For July, it will be even higher because pending contracts, the leading indicator for closing, pending contracts in June was actually above 1 year ago. Just imagine, in the midst of a pandemic, high unemployment, yet home sales or pending contracts is actually higher than compared to 1 year ago. In fact, 1/3 of our realtors indicated in a recent survey they are busier today compared to last year. So last year, many people said it was a good year. Now 1/3 of the members think they are actually busier now than before. Even better news, what do realtors say to their clients? Be serious, demonstrate seriousness. And way you demonstrate seriousness is to get a mortgage approval. So this is consumers filing to get mortgages for buying a home, not refinances, only to buy a home. So what you see in this chart is that at the beginning, before the pandemic, mortgage application was running about 10% above 1 year ago. So before the pandemic, I thought this was going to be a good year. Then we went to a lockdown. You see the plunge. But as the economy started reopening and led by Georgia, I mean, Georgia really saw a large application to buy a home. So you see rising, and now it is up 20% from 1 year ago. So just looking at this chart, clearly a V-shaped recovery. Now, President Trump is saying we have a V-shaped recovery in the economy. And I would say that's an exaggeration because housing market is in a V-shaped recovery, but not the rest of the economy. Certainly not the airline industry or the hotel industry. But in the housing sector, a V-shaped recovery. Another thing, the sector that is not in a V is commercial real estate. Who would lease office space in the current environment or the retail shop? So commercial real estate is really struggling at the moment, but the housing has really come through in the current environment. So why are people buying homes? Because mortgage rates are at an all-time low. That's the blue line, 3% mortgage rate. This is a record low mortgage rates, and people want to take advantage of these rates. I put that little orange line to give some condition of what may happen in the future. That orange line is 10-year Treasury borrowing rate. So when the US government used to borrow, that's the interest rate they are paying. Blue and the orange line move very similarly together historically. If you look at the recent data points, the last data points, the orange line is much, much lower than the blue line. In other words, the gap is a little wider than normal, which is suggesting that there is a possibility that mortgage rate may even go under 3%, say 2.7%, 2.8%. So that is a possibility. I cannot guarantee, but given the larger gap than normal, that someone who may be missing out on home buying today and they can only enter the market 2 months from now, I would say don't panic. Mortgage rate may actually be even lower at that time than before. But the jumbo mortgages are not working. But in Syracuse market, that's not important. It's important in, say, the New York City market, but less important in the upstate New York market. With the buyers coming in, people taking out mortgages, home ownership rate is rising. First-time buyers, we are seeing the first-time buyers rising. But the strong spike up in home ownership rate in the most recent data collection, I would say take it with a grain of salt. Why? Because way you compute home ownership rate is very simple. You send out Census Bureau people out into the neighborhood and they knock on the door and ask, are you a homeowner or a renter? Or some buildings, multifamily buildings. So based on that, they get what the home ownership rate would be. But in the recent round of data collection, they did not walk the street. What they did is, because of COVID, they did a phone call. So phone call evidently had a higher response rate among homeowners versus renters. So I know home ownership rate is rising, but I doubt it's rising this fast in a spiking way. So just keep that in mind. Now, one constraining factor is lack of inventory, especially at the starter home or the mid-price point. often attracting multiple offers because of lack of inventory. And in the, again, mid-price market, starter home, the inventory shortage will not go away. And here's why. We need more home building to relieve inventory. And this is the home building activity over the past 20 years. Orange line is historical average. So back in 2005, 2006, we overbuilt and we had the subprime lending condition. Everything blew up, foreclosure prices. But for the past 10 years, we have had underproduction compared to normal. And this cumulative effects of 10 years of underproduction is where we have inventory shortage. Right before the pandemic, home builders finally went above the line. But once we had the pandemic, Governor Cuomo said, construction job, no more, go away, go home, stay at home. So we saw the home building activity contract again. Now it's beginning to recover again, but because of this short pause, we will not have any inventory coming onto the market for the remainder of the year, which means tight supply condition for mid-price home and entry-level home. And this will persist for the remainder of the year. Only in 2021, we may see some semblance of a balanced market, provided the home builders start building home where the demand resides. Now, one of the constraining factors for home builders will say, well, they don't have enough construction workers. So I wanted to illustrate this related to job losses. First, look at the blue line, the light blue color. Those are the actual job losses. So most of the job losses in America currently is in the leisure and hospitality. You work as a cook in the hotel or cleaning, you lost your job because people are not using hotels. And also the retail sector. But the construction job did lose job, but only temporarily. You know, we need to build more home. That will soon turn positive. Look at the wage difference, weekly earnings. Leisure and hospitality, they make about $400 per week, while in construction is close to $1,200. So people who are laid off in leisure and hospitality, maybe they should consider getting some skill to go into construction because pay is clearly higher, and that's where we need more workers. So something to consider if you have some influence at the local level, maybe community college, you know, the training for the basic skills. One great trend that will benefit the Syracuse market is the following: a shift in consumer preference. Consumers want homes in the suburbs, rural area, and small towns, and away from urban city centers. Part of this change could be some of the social unrest that is occurring, the protests. Now, I would say vast majority of protests are doing the right cause of raising the awareness. You know, we need to raise the awareness that Black Lives Matter. But we know that some players in the protest turn violent, throw bricks. Portland occurring every single day. And some families with children are very uncomfortable about this. So they are saying, I want to be far away in a more peaceful neighborhood out in the suburbs. But the biggest change, biggest reason as to why this is occurring, in my view, is work from home phenomena. We are in this Zoom conference call. I didn't know about Zoom before. I wish I had known before the pandemic so I could buy some stocks of Zoom. But as we are doing more Zoom conferences, you know, office meetings and so forth, many companies are beginning to say, you know, workers are just as productive. So Facebook believes half of their employees can work from home forever. Twitter has announced to their employees, you can work from home forever. And I think more and more office-related companies will provide greater work from home flexibility. Rather than come to office 5 days a week, maybe it's 2 days a week. So if that's the case, commuting is no longer an issue. So people say, oh, well, I don't have to live so close to Manhattan. I can live out in the suburbs. Or some people may say, why don't I live out in Syracuse where I can buy a mansion for affordable prices? So you may begin to see people say, work from home, I can live farther away, smaller towns, more affordable regions, get a larger house. So that's a positive trend developing for the upstate New York, I believe. So the forecast is that for 2020, home prices rising because we are housing shortage. Home sales, even though we missed the critical spring buying season, activity is so strong in autumn and probably going into the winter, better winter this year compared to before, it could be down only 2 to 4%. It's still questionable, maybe a little down a little more, but not the devastating, say, 30% reduction in sale. That's not going to happen. So sales will be down only modestly. But going into 2021, sales rising, and I am quite bullish about home sales because there's a second level demand for home sales. And what is that second level? Second level is the following. Some families who were very content with their home, they were absolutely content with their home, saying, look, I'm not in the market. That's before the pandemic. Now, what they are realizing is that 3-bedroom home is insufficient. They need that 4th bedroom to turn it into office space. So people who have been content are no longer content if work from home is permitted in a greater flexibility. So that would be the second level of demand that one will benefit from overall transactions. So overall market condition, I think 2021 is very positive. And also, as we reopen the economy, phase 4, phase 5, phase 6, jobs will come around. We will not be back to normal even after 2021, but at least we are not down as much as what it is today. So with each passing month, there should be some more job creation. And just comment is that in the first wave in the 1950s, when people moved to the suburbs, because people had automobiles. Before they did not have automobiles, they wanted to live close to the city, they have to walk, whatnot. But now with automobile, they went out. But many community across the whole country, there was covenant on the home to say, if you are non-white, you cannot buy the property. That was actual, part of the homeowner association covenant. So that prevented many African Americans from buying a property. Second wave was more related to the rising in crime, the white flight. And Professor William Julius Wilson at Harvard wrote a book, Truly Disadvantaged, about the importance of neighborhood in providing the opportunity. But the third wave that's coming is work from home. I believe this will be the third wave. But please understand, there are more Asians living in the suburbs, more Hispanics living in the suburbs, more African Americans living in the suburbs today than central cities. So the fair housing laws become more important than ever before as the trend towards the suburbs for better life, better opportunity, and is coming across all racial categories. So thank you. Go to our website. We have many other information about how to overcome some of the hurdles to homeownership, the millennial preference, sustainability. All that information is provided. But anyway, thank you for allowing me today to share some of the information.
There was a lot of data to unbundle in what you just gave us, and it was a terrific view of us in real time. As we go out and talk to the general public, and we're having, talking to buyers or sellers or just at a cocktail party socially, how would you summarize all of the data that you just gave us in an elevator speech about what is happening with residential real estate right now in real time, say in central New York?
First, you should say that the buyers are actively looking for home because of the low mortgage rates. Now, some people will say, well, we have high unemployment. Unfairly, the people who have lost jobs are people in the lower wage category. People who have office employment has pretty much have jobs conditions. So people who have lost jobs, they were not in home ownership market to begin with. But I'm being too long, so to make it elevator pitches, mortgage rates are low. Buyers are trying to take advantage of the low rates. There could be possibility that a trend of people wanting to live in more affordable regions, which Syracuse is clearly one of these cities. So the demand outlook for Syracuse looks very bright, not only this year, but into future years. So even though there's other parts of the economy, a little shaky, housing is on solid foundation.
And then, thank you. And then I would pose the same question for, but from the commercial perspective for those here today that practice commercial real estate?
Commercial real estate's going to be challenged. But as any business person, if you face challenges, you don't just put a blanket over your head. You try to seek opportunities. And the opportunities are, well, is there any segment? And the segment that is doing well is warehousing, industrial properties, because of the online distribution part. So that is doing very well. And the other part is maybe the downtown retail shop could be tough for a while, but people are going to the suburbs, so maybe going into trying to expand into the suburban business. Land development because of home building shortage. But office and retail, frankly, that's going to take really long time to recover.
Very, very good. Thank you. Don Radke has asked, in Syracuse, we've had a tremendous housing development downtown over recent years. Do you think this will now end? And I can piggyback off of that. From 2008 to 2018, we saw in the downtown business district of Syracuse about a 70% increase in rental high-end apartments. And so we were starting to see a trend of people going back to the city over the duration of that time. Do you see that now switching due to COVID as well as people being able to work from home?
Appreciate that question very much, because for the past 10 years, America experienced downtown revival, even in cities where people did not expect. I was up in Buffalo, where it was completely ghost town for many, many years, but people are starting to go back to downtown. There's a lot of downtown development, and it was quickly being occupied. Millennials wanted walkable communities, the more vibrant life, the restaurant and other activities, concerts, and Syracuse with the university. I think there was a huge potential for downtown. Temporarily during the COVID, because of the university students, maybe not 100% back to Syracuse yet. So there's that element. But there's also an element about being cautious in multifamily, elevator, common area. But vaccine will be discovered. We know that vaccine will be discovered. But even as vaccine is discovered, we may still have the case where work from home phenomena leads some people to say, I want a larger space, single family home with a yard. And hence, whatever is in the pipeline, it will go through, but any new development in downtown, I will be very cautious.
Okay. Syracuse is experiencing what much of the country is experiencing, the housing shortage. A couple of years ago, when you joined us, you helped us to identify the cause for that, the lack of the replacement of inventory with new construction. The number of years it takes from concept to being able to pull permits for development takes quite some time in central New York. Are we still where we were 2 years ago in that we need new construction to alleviate the pressures that we're all feeling, that being the lack of inventory? Is that the number one mend or fix?
So the cleanest way to build more inventory is to build more homes. And often, there can be, upper middle income families, but as people move in, trade in, they're leaving their existing home for other first-time buyers. So we need that chain reaction to occur. So one of the things that is first, what's hindering building? Is that the excessive zoning law, long permitting process, or even very high timber prices, a lot of lumber that's coming from Canada because of the tariff that is in place. So we applauded President Trump when he said we need to have more, overcome some of the barriers related to excessive zoning. So we say, yes, we need to support that. But we opposed President Trump when he said, let's put a lot of large tariffs on Canadian lumber because that's raising the cost of home construction. So we just do policy after policy, issue after issue. And right now the builders are saying it's still the zoning permitting process, and now the lumber prices being very high.
Very good. And one last question. I see from Terry Quigg, and it's a kind of a synopsis of the conversation you and I are having right now. Terry asks, how long do you expect the shortage of resale inventory to last in the Syracuse market?
So it depends upon the price segments. So I think on the starter home level, it's going to take probably all the way through the end of 2021 to get some semblance of the balanced market. On little more upper end market, that there is plentiful inventory. The buyers are more unique, trying to match that part. But at least for the remainder of the year, it looks to be tight market. So hopefully, the development that has been focused on downtown, I think some of the city officials who manage land and others need to quickly expedite some housing permits out into the suburbs.
Thank you for watching another segment of GNN. We hope that you will attend the next Raising the Bar series on September 10th at 10 a.m., where our speaker will be Onondaga County Health Commissioner, Dr. Gupta.